A Journey of Transformation. Author, investigative mythologist, and host of Revelations Radio, William Henry is our guide tonight into the transformative power of art and symbols of human ascension. He has been documenting humanity's awakening to its spiritual magnificence for over 20 years, and inspired by the great accomplishments of antiquity, William brings the evidence of our divinity. By bringing to life the stories of ascension through art, he teaches the secrets of soul transfiguration or metamorphosis and connects people to one another across cultures, time, and space. And tonight, William Henry discusses the 9/11 memorial in New York City, the Jewish legend of the return of the Messiah, Ezekiel's temple, the New Jerusalem, the Black Cube, Saturn, 2001, A Space Odyssey, and more. You're going to want to pull up a chair and take a seat and listen in tonight. Welcome, Henry.
Hi, it's nice to talk with you, Hillary.
Well, thanks for being here. I've been a big fan of your work for a very long time, and I'm very excited because this topic has been on everybody's wish list of wanting to know more. So where do we start?
Well, why don't we start on September 11th, 2001, when two enormous buildings were not leveled. They did not collapse. They were powderized. They were somehow turned to dust. Nobody knows how, but there was more than 400,000 cubic feet of concrete that was almost instantly, right before our eyes, converted into 15-micron talcum-like powder. How did this happen? The answer is, I don't know how it happened. Experts like Dr. Judy Wood are putting forth some extraordinary concepts about how it might have happened, maybe some kind of advanced directed energy weapon. There are others that say there might have been thermite involved. We don't know how it happened. We don't know exactly who took down or powderized those towers, but the fact is they were powderized, and that's what caught my attention. As I had said in my V-blog for 9/11, I've been studying and you said in the introduction as well, Hillary, I've been studying the Jewish legend of the return of the Messiah. This figure has a to-do list, if you will, that includes, among other things, bringing Moses and the generation of the desert back to life. He'll reveal the three holy vessels of the temple, which include the Ark of the Covenant, the flask of manna, and the cruse of sacred anointing oil, all of which disappeared mysteriously. He'll wave the holy scepter given to him by God, and he will grind the mountains of the Holy Land to powder. When I first started doing this research on this legend back in the 90s, we weren't really sure about a lot of this, but then a lot of books started coming out about the Ark of the Covenant. And I did research on my own about the scepter of God, this wand of miracles that Jesus is portrayed with in early Christian art, similar to the rod or wand of Moses. And I was stuck on this concept of, what do you mean, grind the mountains of the Holy Land to powder? What could that mean? Well, at that time, there was a lot of research being done. Sir Lawrence Gardner and others were talking about white powder gold and the possibility that the ancients, especially the Egyptians, had a technology whereby they could grind the alluvial gold of the Holy Land, Egypt, into powder. And they actually drank this powder, and it was thought to feed their light bodies. So back in the 90s, I started to think, well, I wonder if it's possible that what we're talking about is a revival of the secrets of manna, the secrets of ormus, this unusual powder that not only feeds the light body of the pharaohs, but also promotes invisibility, telekinesis. It promotes levitation, all kinds of extraordinary capabilities, anti-gravity effects, really incredible stuff. And then 9/11 happened. And right before our eyes, we watched these two enormous towers that were referred to as mountains by many literally be dustified or powderized. And I began to wonder, is it possible that what we're seeing here is some kind of mega ritual that has to do with this messianic prophecy?
Well, I just want to let everybody know listening, I interviewed Judy Wood, Dr. Judy Wood, in a two-part special last fall, and you can find her interviews not only on my archives on Achieve Radio, but also on my YouTube channel. For those of you who would like to listen, her book, Where Did the Towers Go?, is a life and game changer. I was lucky enough to preview the book before it actually came out and was available for sale, and it's one of the most amazing books you could ever possibly get your hands on. And William, now this powderizing of the towers, and did you come to this realization as you were watching it on 9/11, or was this over the course of some time afterwards when you were researching it?
Well, it was actually a short time afterward. I mean, I didn't actually have a television at the time 9/11 happened. There was a period of about 5 years where I didn't have a TV. So I listened to 9/11, the reports about 9/11 on the radio. And it wasn't until I was traveling shortly after that I started seeing these images of things that came down in a free fall fashion and literally seemed like a bag of flour sort of exploding. And so that was the impetus really for starting to connect this up with this messianic prophecy. And then I started talking about it with people and wondering, well, how could this possibly fit with a messianic prophecy? You think of the return of the appearance of the Messiah to the Jews, the second coming to the Christians. You think of that as an event that would be based on love, certainly, and it wouldn't have to do with such a violent event where thousands of people were literally sacrificed during this event. And then, the more I talked about it with people, I finally got an answer. I took a tour group to Egypt, and I was talking about this, and a woman said, well, wait a minute, think about the effect of 9/11. Think about the immediate aftermath of 9/11. What was the world like in those first few days afterward? And the answer was, as many of us can recall, the world was united. The world was at peace. It was like a cosmic reset moment there for a few days where the world stood still. Where were you when the world stopped turning was Alan Jackson's famous song about that time that really captured a lot of the sentiment of those days for people. And that began to sort of, again, take me into this direction that maybe there's something to this, that perhaps what we're looking at here is a fulfillment of this prophecy. I should mention one other thing that also got me really thinking about this as well. One of the other items on the to-do list is to reveal the primal light which shone before the week of creation. And this has to do with perhaps the Big Bang, something along those lines is the way I was thinking about it. Then I went to the particle accelerator at CERN just before they closed it to the public, and you could take the elevator down 300 feet underground to visit the Atlas detector, this enormous cathedral of science, as they call it. And when you got off the elevator there was a sign that was greeting you that said, revealing the light that shone after the first week of creation. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's exactly what the Jewish legend says about the return of the Messiah, that this primal light, the secrets of this primal light will be shown, that the secrets of this light will reappear. And I began to think, well, wait a minute, I need to get back into this to-do list research because it seems as if we're starting to click some things off here.
So the recreating of the primal light, I find that fascinating. I find it fascinating that you went to see CERN and you got to see that. And do you feel that what we're looking at here is a rebirth of this primal light, and that they've discovered it and they are understanding it, and now this is kind of a dedication to a rebirth of civilization on this planet?
That's certainly one level of interpretation here that I would certainly go along with that. I feel that what they were doing at CERN, we all know by now that they're actually involved in time travel research. They're involved in Stargate research there. That as they reveal the secrets of the God particle, which they hope to do by Christmas this year, they're either going to say yay or nay about the God particle by this Christmas, or certainly by the end of 2012, according to their forecasts. That what we are doing is ultimately rediscovering these ultimate secrets that I believe are the subject matter of of utmost interest, let me put it that way, to the Messiah or the returning Christ figure.
Now, I just want to put this out there because there are a lot of people who look at these kind of symbolisms, the memorial and how it's set up. Now, the dove building is fascinating to me, which I saw on your video blog. The way they created that to be what you have to enter in order to go underground into the memorial part of it. And but my question to you is, what about the people who believe that the elite is coming in and trying to take over the world, and they're really a dark force at work that don't have our best interest in mind and are creating these things in a way to, kind of control consciousness or manipulate it at least? What are your thoughts on that? Because I just want to play off both sides of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you know, my co-author, Dr. Mark Gray, and I wrote a book about the art and symbolism of the U.S. Capitol, and I found much the same response to that. I mean, there's a certain segment of the population that will never, ever see the U.S. Capitol for what it really is, a dome of ascension that has key Enlightenment teachings embedded within it. Their response is, I wouldn't go anywhere near that rat house. And so they have the same kind of perspective here about the 9/11 memorial and many of these other places that are so heavy with this symbolism. This well, in my view, in my experience, talking with audiences, has been poisoned by other authors who, in my personal view, have not done enough research about this symbolism to really know about it. They just automatically call the kettle black. That attracts an audience, and then they move on. They've never often been to these places that they are going so crazy about. If they had, I can guarantee they would have a different opinion. Now, I haven't been to the 9/11 memorial yet, so in a way I'm kind of breaking one of my own rules here in terms of commenting on something without having actually put my boots on the ground. But I do believe that, of course, as you're suggesting, there is a positive and a negative interpretation to all of this symbolism. Personally, I choose the positive, and that's just not turning a blind eye and recognizing that there's a possibility of the dark elite, people that are trying to control you and want to get in your pants kind of a thing. I can't stand all of that kind of approach. I think it's very base. I think it's unconstructive, and it doesn't truly do justice to the individuals who are studying this symbolism.
Well, I agree, and I think that we have to be very discerning in how we approach these things. We almost have to be neutral in our research when we look into these things, and then we have to experience it for ourselves. And as in all things, people can take symbols, as I'm sure your expertise in this matter can validate, and use symbols for good or for bad or for indifferent neutral meanings. But it really is the intention behind the symbols that reaches people. Don't you agree?
I agree. And I also further believe, though, that if you subscribe to the power of these places, or the notion that these places have power, that we as individuals, and certainly groups of individuals, have it within our capability to utilize the power of those places. I live here in Nashville, where we have an extraordinary place I call Stargate Park. It's a 2,200-foot-long magician's rod that is laid out and growing on 19 acres at the base of our state capitol. Nearby is a scale replica of Athena's Parthenon from ancient Athens, Greece, including the tallest indoor statue in the Western world, a 42-foot-tall statue of Pallas Athena. I've actually had researchers come into town and say, oh, gosh, this is really dark, evil symbolism. And then they go back to their audiences and they report that we've got this Nazi stuff going on in Nashville, and, oh, you really want to stay away from all of these places. My response to that is, gosh, you just missed a huge opportunity to learn something about yourself. And two, if indeed you are saying there is a dark force here, then my response to that would be, well, let's move it on out of here.
Yeah.
Let's get in here and let's take this over and utilize this tremendously powerful place for positive purposes. And so that's what I'm doing here in Nashville. And I encourage people, if they have places like this in their own backyard, first answer the question, what's in your own backyard? Because chances are you've got some of these places in your backyard. And two, if you don't like what's going on at the places, then go there and do something about it. Getting back to the Capitol, the idea was you've got these researchers, some of whom I consider to be friends, who I know have never been to Washington, who wail about the Capitol. And it's like, look, why don't you go there, and why don't you put your energy into this tremendously powerful place, and that will help all of us to change what's going on in these places. But you know what? From my experience, especially with the Capitol, people were, A, totally disinterested in changing things. They'd rather bitch about them than do something about it. And 2, it just takes too much effort to leave your house and go do something about what's going on out there and change our world. That's just the bottom line. I hate to sound cynical, but that's what I've been experiencing.
Well, I don't think it's cynical at all. I think it's very courageous, and I think it's encouraging for people. I've been to Egypt also, as you know. You've been to Egypt for many years now. You take groups there all the time, and you know, when you walk through the temples, you bring your experience to them too. You bring your energy, and it bounces off the energy there, and so we do have an effect. And so for people who do go to the 9/11 Memorial, if they want to infuse a higher frequency into that place, I think it's one of the most beautiful offerings you could give. This place is it's obviously a very special place. We've had an extraordinary event happen here. It's been visited by, you know, thousands of people already, and will be continued to, you know, for a long time. And, you know, we have an opportunity to add our energy to something that we could actually enhance and change, just like working with the grids, you know, the earth grids. Everybody has a different intention or purpose of working on, you know, a different grid point, but it depends on how much heart and how much love you pour into something and how much you share that with other people. And that's what changes the energy of these things. I'm looking forward to going to it. I think it's going to be an extraordinary experience, and I'm sure you'll find many people will share that with you. Now, going back to, I want to talk about the CERN again, going back to the time travel, the God particle. I find it very interesting that this memorial has been created in this time frame. I think that do you feel that there's a connection between the discovery of the God particle and the time travel technology that they're doing at CERN, and also, you know, the unveiling of this memorial?
Well, I mean, that's a very fascinating question, because we are in this 2012 time window here. The Mayans, in their symbolism, indicate that it's possible that we're going to be seeing a return of Quetzalcoatl, their savior figure, who rides upon a serpent rope. John Major Jenkins has alerted us to the possibility that that serpent rope could, in fact, be a wormhole. I kind of picked up that rope and ran with it and started looping it around all these different places around the world, Stargate parks, all these various art installations that are reflecting the concept of the Stargate, the wormhole, the Ring of Eternity, all of these sorts of things. And certainly the 9/11 Memorial is a reflection of that, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a moment. And so I look at these as examples to say, okay, this new consciousness is here, and we're starting to see this new consciousness manifest in the art and symbolism in these urban spaces. Nashville, Dallas, Detroit, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, New York, all have on display, Chicago, all have on display in the heart of their cities these incredible art installations that are Stargate or wormhole themed. And so when we look at this, it's to say, well, all right, here we are in this 2012 window. We've got the search for the God particle going on, which Dr. Leon Letterman, who named it the God particle, said that what we're really searching for here or doing is recreating an ancient biblical story, the story of the Tower of Babel, the story of the ladder, tower, or stairway that reaches into the heavens. And now all of a sudden we've got this mega ritual unfolding before our eyes in Manhattan, the 9/11 Memorial, and the unveiling of this incredibly powerful symbolism that has to do with stargates and wormholes and gateways into other realms.
Well, I feel very strongly that this is very symbolic of the actual discovery of being able to do that. I think that we have the technology, that we've been exposed to it and exploring it for a very long time. And, you know, the grand organizers of the architecture for this memorial, may not know that. They may know that. I don't know. But there's just so many connections to it. So why don't we just get into the symbolism? What have you discovered about the memorial site?
Okay, well, first, let me say this, that let's go back to that to-do list just for a moment, okay? Because we have to pick up one other piece that's very important here. We talked about how on the to-do list we're talking about bringing Moses and the generation of the desert back to life. We're talking about revealing the secrets of manna, and I think a lot of the audience who's familiar with Lawrence Gardner's work and others will recognize, hey, we know a lot about the Ark of the Covenant. We know more about the Ark of the Covenant and manna and the sacred anointing oil than at any other time in human history, except for the time when it was utilized by Moses and also by Mary Magdalene and ultimately by Jesus. So we're in this time now where we're going back and we're putting together what I refer to as the kit. And once you put the kit together, now you're ready to open the door or the gate for the Messiah or the Christ figure. We talked about the holy rod being part of that. We're talking about grinding the mountains of the Holy Land to powder, revealing the primal light that shone before the week of creation. Then also, once all of that happens, once all that stuff is checked off, then what we're told is the Shekinah, the divine presence, will become visible to all. Now, this is really interesting too, Hillary, in light of the timing, because if we think of the Shekinah as the divine presence, it's the divine glory. It's symbolized by the rainbow. What I've done in my work is to say, well, okay, the Shekinah radiates from the throne of God. Where is the throne of God? Nobody knows for sure. But what I've done and asked people to consider, and we'll ask our audience tonight to go along with me on, is that what if we think of our Milky Way galaxy as the temple? And what if we think of the Holy of Holies of the temple being the center of the Milky Way galaxy? This is where all the good stuff is supposed to be happening around 2012, according to the Mayans. And this is why I'm asking you to think this way. If the Holy of Holies is the center of the galaxy, then the Shekinah must radiate from the center of the galaxy. Well, lo and behold, the last 10 years, NASA has, for the first time conceivably in human history, pulled back the veil on the center of the galaxy, and we now know that we can see that divine radiance coming from the galactic center. Just November 10th, 2010, NASA announced the discovery of these 26,000 light-year high bubbles of gamma rays, these pillars of light that bisect our galaxy. And I wonder, could these be the pillar of fire by day and the pillar of fire by night, the Shekinah, that the Israelites followed during their wanderings in the wilderness? So my point here is that it could be interpreted that, yes, the Shekinah is becoming visible to all. We now can see the center of the galaxy. We are becoming more galactic-oriented type beings. So what happens after this, then, is the Shekinah becomes visible. Then the temple will stand in complete perfection as Ezekiel described it. Now, what we have to recognize here is that Ezekiel's temple is compared to the New Jerusalem. That is, a perfect cube. And it's the appearance of this cube-shaped temple that starts the Messianic age, the New Age, or what's variously referred to as the world to come, or perhaps even the age of Aquarius. So now we come back to Manhattan. We've been anticipating for 10 years, knowing that there's going to be a memorial that's going to be created for that commemorates the 9/11 event. What is the memorial going to be? Is it going to be some incredible architectural feat? Are they going to rebuild the towers? What are they going to do to commemorate or memorialize this event? Well, after a contest in which over 2,500 submissions are looked at, the winner is a cube-shaped temple. In fact, two cube-shaped temples that resemble the Jewish descriptions of Ezekiel's cube, a cube within a cube. And I'm looking at this going, you got to be kidding me. This is yet another kind of resonant chord or a harmonizing with this incredible to-do list.
We have a caller calling in from Washington, D.C. who has a question about the Russian teardrop memorial that was built in honor of 9/11. Thank you. Can we put him on the line?
Hello.
Hello. You have a question for William?
Yeah. I was curious about that Russian teardrop that was created by the artist Zurab Tesserito, and that there was very little press on this being constructed, and also that I'm wondering about the symbolism for the fact that it is lined up with the Statue of Liberty.
William, are you familiar with the Russian teardrop memorial that they built in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's the one in New Jersey, and I'm fascinated by that one because when you talk about, again, we're viewing this through the messianic lens here, the lens of Christ imagery, and what happens is that at the baptism of Jesus and also at the crucifixion of Jesus, the heavens are torn open. And this is exactly what you see in this teardrop. It's not so much, it's a teardrop, but it's in this ripped open space that almost looks like a mandorla or a gateway. And it's got this dripping teardrop that looks almost like quicksilver in its color. And the first time I saw that, I think Mark Gray showed that to me the first time, and I looked at that and said, gosh, this is like ripping open a hole in the fabric of space-time. And it just plays off so beautifully all of this other symbolism that we've been describing here. Now, of course, it's possible that this is just mere coincidence, that in our modern age you might expect to see artists kind of reflecting on quantum physics, or they might be reflecting on some of these concepts, and it could wind its way into the artwork. But I do find it quite fascinating that this should be one of the most prominent, one of the earliest 9/11 memorials.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of it right now online, and it looks like one of the towers with a crack down the middle of it and this kind of liquid coming through.
Like silver.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, and I want to thank our caller for bringing up that question. I'm sorry, what's your name?
CD.
CD, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask while we have you on the air?
Well, it was interesting that he brought up the fact that it looks like a tear in the fabric of space and time, and with it being lined up with the Statue of Liberty. So if you're peering through it with the teardrop there at the Statue of Liberty, as if the Statue of Liberty could step through that tear in space and time fabric into another dimension.
Well, this seems to be kind of the theme that we're really developing here, is it's all about humankind grasping a hold of the ultimate secrets of the gods. I feel the ancient gods, including Jesus, were Stargate traveling time travelers. And here we're seeing this mega ritual that plays into the Jewish messianic prophecy, and it also so perfectly dovetails or matches with what quantum physics is teaching us right now. And it just, again, suggests this idea that we're entering into this new age, and this artwork is there to reflect that.
It's certainly pretty fascinating to sit here and stare at it. I'm looking at the picture, and it's just quite captivating. Thank you very much for your question. It was very relevant. Now, William, what do you suppose the Statue of Liberty has to do with the alignment of these memorials?
I haven't looked at that directly, but of course, New York, Manhattan has been a great playground for these symbolists for a very long time. And when you look at it, I mean, it's kind of like a Rorschach test, really, Hillary. I mean, you can draw all kinds of lines, you can draw all kinds of connections that you want, and all of them are relevant. But to me, just the basic statement that we have to make about this or acknowledge is that it's no coincidence, I feel, that this all lines up with this messianic symbolism. I think that is the message that is trying to be conveyed here. And we have to put a note in here that most Americans have forgotten that the New Jerusalem was an important theme in the Puritan colonization of New England as far back as the 17th century. I mean, for 400 years, people have been coming to America inspired by the passages in the book of Revelation about the cube-shaped New Jerusalem, which they interpreted as being a symbol for the new Holy Land, America. In fact, the Puritans saw themselves as the builders of the New Jerusalem on earth, an idea that was absolutely foundational to American nationalism. I mean, this is the absolute cornerstone of American history. And so, of all places where you see this extraordinary symbolism, it's in America's Babylon. It's in America's new Babylon, if you will. But 9/11, the 9/11 memorial, is arguably America's most holy place these days. There is no other place that is highly revered, as highly protected, or is in fact quite contentious, because you've got people that would perhaps listen to what we're describing tonight or discussing tonight and say, this is actually heresy. To even suggest that there could be some other level of influence going on here is heretical to the story with a capital S that has been promulgated among the American people about what happened on 9/11 and its ultimate meaning. And this is why I think these conversations are so constructive, is because we're trying to get to the innermost meaning of this and to really fully be able to benefit ourselves from the incredible energy that is in this place.
When you talk about the Tower of Babel, how does this memorial represent the Tower of Babel?
Well, I'm not saying it directly represents the Tower of Babel, although the imagery that we see at the 9/11 memorial is somewhat reflective of the Tower of Babel, because what was the Tower of Babel? Originally, it was a ladder, tower, or stairway that reached into the heavens. But the Old Testament God Yahweh wasn't ready for company back in the book of Genesis time, so he demolished humanity's tower and separated humankind by language, something that remained in effect until today. And then after the destruction of the Tower of Babel, the meaning of the word Babel was changed from its original meaning of ladder, tower, or stairway to heaven to its present meaning, which is confusion, nonsense. Humankind build a ladder or stairway to heaven? Nonsense. That's not happening. But what we're starting to see, though, is that the Tower of Babel has been recreated, according to Dr. Leon Letterman, at the particle accelerator at CERN, and there may be a connection in all of this imagery and these events that are lining up with Messianic prophecy, 2012 prophecy, and the introduction of what we refer to as the New Age.
Now, I wanted to ask you, there was an earthquake that happened on the East Coast recently that created a crack in the Washington Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you find, other than the obvious, but what kind of symbolism do you apply to that in relation to the unveiling of this also?
Well, I mean, gosh, you just have to marvel at the timing, and I don't have much to say beyond that obvious. I think that is just, it basically says it all. And I don't want to run away with some of these stories. I mean, you hear these people are out there saying that this was all some kind of a New World Order sort of thing, that there's a battle going on between the white hats and the black hats of the New World Order, and that, in fact, that wasn't an earthquake at all, Hillary. It was the detonation of a nuclear device under Washington, D.C., and, oh, by the way, one of them was popped up in Colorado as well. No evidence to support that, just a bunch of people just out there saying stuff that just kind of, I guess, to get attention. No idea, but you look at these events, and it's just telling us ultimately, hey, it's time to wake up. And we are in a time when the fundamental beliefs that we've all grown up with are shattering. In fact, isn't that part of what ultimately happened with 9/11 is it represented the beginning of the end of democracy in America. It introduced the war on terror, and it was literally a volte-face moment, and we're living it now. And what we've all got to determine now is that, do we like this new reality? Is it going the way we want it to go, or do we now need to begin putting personal energy into shifting and changing it into the direction that we do want to see it go?
Well, I honestly see it as a good thing. I think it was rather telling of the times that we're in, the way humanity's consciousness is, in fact, shifting how people are waking up. And I choose to see it that way, and I choose to share it that way with other people. I think you can get into all the other things that you mentioned, of course, but where does that really lead you? Does that lead you to feeling better? Do you feel lifted up over discussing things like that? Or is it really just, to me, it just kind of drags me through mud to talk about all these awful things. Whether or not they're true, who knows? I wasn't there. I wasn't underground. I didn't see it, and, so on and so forth. But what I do see it is symbolic of a new age coming in, a shift in consciousness, a shift in structure. And then we have this new plant, this new place unveiled, which, by the way, when you look at it from a certain angle, it was been designed that from a certain angle, it is an obelisk. Have you seen pictures of that?
Which are you referring to, Hillary? The
9/11 memorial, yes, the building that they put in there.
No, I haven't seen it looking like an obelisk. That's fascinating.
Well, I think Mark Gray was actually the one that mentioned that. He was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he had talked about how you can the designers, the architects had actually worked into the design and shape of the building that from a certain angle, you see a obelisk shape that goes down the building. So, in fact, it makes it the tallest obelisk in the world.
Fascinating. Well, that's very important symbolism. Obviously, taking us back to Egypt, we've got the obelisk in Central Park. We've got the one in Paris, the one in London. These are all coveted by the likes of Saddam Hussein and others. It's very important symbolism to the power brokers, if you will. So I'll have to take a look at that. That's very interesting. But you mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about some of the other aspects of that black box symbolism, the cube symbolism that really caught my eye, which is it's striking similarity not only to Ezekiel's temple and with the cube within the cube sort of design, but when I looked at it, I was immediately struck by the black Stargate aspect of it. It reminded me of the monolith in Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it once again was pointing to this concept that what we could be dealing with here is this shift in consciousness towards the Stargate or the wormhole symbolism, and recognizing that here's just yet another tremendous example of how this symbolism is manifesting.
How does a person use a Stargate? How do we see? I love how you're describing this, and I think it's fascinating. And what I wonder is, an average person who listens to this, who goes to it and sits there on one of the benches and tries to just tune into the energy of it, how does a human being use a Stargate?
Well, first of all, these places that we're talking about, Manhattan, Nashville, Detroit, Philadelphia, Dallas, they're pilgrimage sites in my view. I call them urban pilgrimages, because the idea is that when you go to these places, and again, I haven't got to put the boots on the ground at the 9/11 memorial. I intend to within the next couple of months here. But when you go to these places, very often what you find are incredibly inspirational writings on the walls. All you do is just pay attention to what's actually written there, the names of some of the monuments, the inspirational inscriptions on the walls, and just the power of the place itself. The sacred geometry that's utilized, it all goes to create a place of reverence and a feeling of the sacred. So in my view, any time that you can get to one of these urban portals, wherever they are, you're going to benefit by the sense of peace and tranquility that you're going to find there, and the recognition that, hey, what it's getting you to think about is, where did I come from? What am I really doing here? And when it's time for me to go, how am I going to leave? Because these are the fundamental questions that the Stargate actually addresses, and certainly Stargate metaphysics addresses that as well. And so these are the positive benefits that anybody can get. Any average person going to these places will be able to feel that. And then what happens is, because of the materials, the black granite, for example, that you find there at reflecting absence at the 9/11 memorial, is actually a stone that holds the frequency or vibration of all of the positive prayers and positive intentions that are going to be poured into those incredible Niagara-like pools that form the reflecting absence. The black cubes are actually those incredible water features that are cleansing and purifying that space, and also bringing a sense of cleansing and purification to all who will visit that space. So this is what I encourage people to do, whether they're in Dallas, Nashville, D.C., or now here at the new Stargate Park, the latest one, the 9/11 Memorial.
There was a beautiful imagery that you had on your video blog of the angels coming down and ascending through these stargates. And do you really think that this is exactly what we're doing with this, that, you know, this ground was made very sacred by the sacrifice that was done that day, and now all of the symbolism, all of the sacred geometry, all of these incredible energies that have been created on this particular spot really does open up something between the dimensions?
I think so. I mean, I'm a huge believer in the power of intention, and I know from working with sacred artwork from the Christian tradition, from the Egyptian tradition, from the Tibetan tradition, that the artists or designers have the capability to transmit that intention into their art. And this is exactly what we find coming from Michael Arad and Peter Walker, who were the architects of the 9/11 Memorial. They sought to make a place of both death and life, where victims could be remembered, but where also, and one of the project managers actually said it, he could envision angels coming into that place and taking the souls who were sacrificed on that day or were killed on that day into other realms. And so, yes, I do believe that is a huge component of what we're seeing here. Thinking definitely makes it so. And that, I believe, is the most important aspect of this memorial.
When you look at this event psychically, William, what do you see?
I'm sorry. When you look at this event and you look at the memorial and you do all your research and you have a tremendous amount of information, but when you look at it psychically, what do you see? How do you feel personally about it? Well, I feel that what we're dealing with here is we're all underneath the game table, and what 9/11 represented was an opportunity for us to recognize, hey, there's a table, there's a game being played, there's a cosmic game being played, and there's a game being played among the power forces on this planet. And what we saw that day was a demonstration of sheer power. And hopefully what we were seeing was a demonstration of sheer power by the good guys. Now, of course, afterward, the whole episode was hijacked by, call it the Black Hats, call it people that drove us into the war on terror, who took the event and twisted it, very much as happens in a lot of different events. But I feel that what we're dealing with here is just this absolute demonstration of sheer power, and that power is ultimately manifested in that dot of real estate and is there and can be utilized by us for positive purposes.
Now, when people go there and let's say that they're really stuck in the hate and the fear and the sadness frequencies of the event, they're really captured in that whole mindset of what the war on terror did bring to us, because we did watch the majority of our citizens in this country anyway, and mostly around the world too, get kind of wrapped up into this warmongered hatred. It became a really dark thing. So when we have these people go in the thousands to this site carrying some of that, do you think that maybe, there's still some transformation work that we need to do as human species, as human beings, to be able to lift up the frequency of such a heavy event?
Oh, I think so, and I think that those cascading waters in those cubes will play an important part of that, because they're constantly bathing that site in what we might metaphorically describe as healing waters or new waters. And again, that brings us to another aspect of the design of Reflecting Absence, the memorial itself, and how many have noticed that they are uncannily similar to the Kaaba in Mecca. And you're either going to say, well, okay, what this is saying is that there's some kind of perhaps a conspiracy here that of course we know the 19 box cutters really didn't have anything to do with it, but lo and behold, we've got a reflection of the Kaaba from Mecca placed on this dot of real estate. I mean, at one level, you can look at that and get really upset and think, gosh, out of over 2,500 submissions, couldn't they find something that was so completely far removed from the Kaaba that we wouldn't dare put a memorial on this spot that is immediately recognizable as a reflection of the Kaaba? Well, the other side of that is that, well, maybe it's okay that we did that because it is actually an inverted form of the Kaaba. And in a sense, what it does is it sort of neutralizes that energy. And so I can see also the perspective that perhaps what they did is in intentionally choosing this design is they might have known that it has a direct correspondence with the Kaaba, but in fact, by making an inverted version of it, it helps to neutralize it or ultimately perhaps nullify the sort of the Muslim connection to it.
That's brilliant, and I think that if for those of you listening, if you want to know more or you want to go to William's website, you can find his video blog directly on there, williamhenry.net. You can also find out more about his upcoming trip to Egypt next year for 2012 and all of the wonderful, fabulous things he has to offer. William, have you thought about the alignment to the constellation Orion that the building and the two fountains seem to mimic, just like the Great Pyramid in Giza?
Yeah, that's a fascinating correspondence. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close, and we're always trying to make the heavens mirror connection. And so there it's just like yet one more example of how Orion just comes up over and over again in these sacred spaces.
Do you think that is where the Stargate brings us to?
I have a very good sense that that's where it takes us to. I mean, certainly the ancient Egyptians were aimed for the star fields of Orion. In the resurrection story of Osiris, his resurrected name is Orion. He's shown on his Ark of the Millions of Years sailing in that direction. And so if you follow the ancient Egyptian symbolism, it's a very good lead. It does lead to Orion's gate.
That's interesting. And then finally, to end the show, I'd like you to discuss the tridents that are actually, I think they're placed right in the beginning entrance there when you go down into the bottom part. I haven't actually been there yet. But the tridents and what's the history behind that and why is that so significant?
Well, again, if we're looking at the meaning of these symbols in American symbolism, the trident is most closely associated with Poseidon, who was the ruler of Atlantis. To the Rosicrucians and to a certain extent the Freemasons, America has been considered, since the time of the 17th century, it's been considered the new Atlantis. And the prophecy set forth by Sir Francis Bacon was that a technologically and spiritually advanced civilization, a new Atlantis, would emerge in America. And so it's very fascinating that here we are reviving this site, and we've got the trident, which is one of the structural features of the World Trade Center, suddenly playing such a key role in the memorial. We realize that the trident also has associations with weaponry, such as the Shiva's trident, and you just wonder, well, what is the ultimate answer with this? We don't know yet. This is all fresh symbolism. We're getting a first look at it, and it's just a very exciting process to be able to follow this path and make some of these connections.
It's very intriguing, and I know I've said that a couple times, but the more I listen to people like you talk about this or, look at the symbols and just really let this information kind of permeate my spirit even and just pay attention to it. There's a lot of things happening here. Bringing up the new Atlantis emerging in America, I think that goes back to the beginning of the show where we were talking about the rise of this technology, the discovery of the God particle, going back to CERN. CERN was actually, brought together by a lot of different countries. It wasn't just one country working on that project, as I'm sure you know. And so what I think is fabulous in some senses, scary in others, is that if this technology is really being used, Dr. Anderson's come on the show. He's talked about the time technology that he's involved in. Peter Moon has come on the show. I've talked to a lot of different researchers and authors about this. What are they doing with it? What have they done with it? Really, when you start to really wrap your mind, or try to anyway, around these concepts, it's pretty mind-blowing and expanding at the same time into what the consequences of would be. And, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by it. And I just thank you for coming on and sharing your information with us. And, I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. And I think you're just making great connections for people who really are seeking answers that don't lead them into, eddies of dark, heavy conspiracy kind of energy, that really have some kind of solution and some kind of encouragement to go into higher and brighter places. Now, I want to give a couple minutes so that you can talk about some of your upcoming events and some of your trips, and give people some information about what you have going on.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, Hillary. And I agree with you. The future is now. The future is here. And this is part of the message of what we're seeing here. And you're going to start to see this all over the world. The London 2012 Olympics has for its icon a wormhole. And you're starting to see this Stargate metaphysics, this wormhole consciousness all over the place. And to me, it's the symbol for the impossible. It's telling us that we are now capable of doing impossible things. If you think it's impossible, it's not. And that's the age that we're in now. And so we've just opened the door. We're now in it. And so part of what we want to do is just kind of join in the excitement and gather along and soak up as much of this knowledge and awakening energy as we possibly can. And that's a lot of what my work is presently about. I've been giving presentations called The Anointed, about living in this new kind of galactic environment that we find ourselves, where suddenly we're realizing that, hey, wait a minute, yeah, I guess Jesus really was a Stargate traveling time traveler, and oh yeah, I guess there are these substances that can awaken our consciousness and can transform us into light beings, and yeah, disclosure is here. We're going to start to recognize that we're part of this interconnected civilization that fans out into the solar system and maybe even beyond into the galaxy. We're recognizing that we live in a completely sentient world. Our thoughts are fully alive. Our universe is alive. It's nothing like we were brought up in. And what we have to then begin to do is to say, well, wait a minute. So what does this do for me? And ultimately, this is the time I feel where I think we have a short window, actually, Hillary. We have a short window of time here where we can go out and gather as much of this enlightenment teachings as we can and utilize it for the perfecting or awakening or enlightening of ourselves, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to move through all of the changes that are coming, that are imminent.
It's from your lips to God's ears, William, because I think you hit it right on the head. I just had a listener send a quick message. Bob from Fort Collins, Colorado, says that there is a gigantic statue of the goddess of destruction, Shiva, located as you walk inside of the CERN collider, and he gave a web link.
No. She's not the destroyer. That was actually a gift from the people of India. It's outside in the garden, and it's actually, it is Shiva in the ring, but as Shiva is the destroyer of ignorance. It has nothing to do, in my view anyway, with destruction and terror and all that sort of thing.
No, I agree. I was just reading his comment. But it's interesting how all of these things, when you start to really look around these places to see, I wouldn't imagine going to a facility like that and seeing a statue like that outside of it or inside or wherever it's located. It would kind of be odd for me to see something like that. I wouldn't expect it anyway, but
Yeah,
these
that's
people
why I
that
went. Yeah.
that are doing this work are really tuned in to the higher, the esoteric meanings of these things and the energies. And so all of these fabulous things, like you were just talking about, these great teachings are so worth still pursuing and still seeking out and still understanding, especially so as we move through these really incredible times. Thank you, William, so much for being here.
Thank you, Hillary. I really enjoyed it. And thank you, everybody, for listening.